growing weary of running from room to room, practicing one-tooth insurance-driven dentistry? Then stay tuned for the latest episode of The Lionhearted, where Dr. Stephen Rasner will hand you the blueprint for what many call the gold standard of general practice dentistry.
Hi everyone, it's Dr. Steve Rasner, and this is week 3 in the continuation of the Altered podcast for helping you navigate your way back during this unprecedented time in our lives. I mean, you don't need me to convince you of that. So here's what you're getting from me, anybody that's following me. I'm giving you real-time, genuine truth as to how I'm navigating this thing. And the reason I say that to you, because it really does have a big impact on who you listen to as to where they're at in their career. And although I've been practicing for a long time, I'm nowhere near the finish line because I don't want to be at the finish line. I want to keep practicing. So I need strategies just like you do. So that's what you're getting from me. And as you heard me say in not so long ago, that I had other podcasts lined up for you. And eventually, if you want to hear those, which you will, on treatment planning and things like that, we'll get to those. In fact, one of the things I want to talk about either in this podcast toward the end or the next couple is treatment planning after we go back. Think about it for a minute. How are you going to approach the patients when you go back? Because there's two things that are really going to be factors that didn't exist 2 months ago. One is a lot of your patients are going to be financially impacted. That may affect very well, or is going to affect, their ability to pay for elective care, or what they think is elective care. That's a really true thing that you have to prepare for. Number 2, the trust issue. There's 3 things. So one is the financial change in some of our patients. 2, how safe do they feel in the environment that you created post-pandemic? And then 3, and this is a huge one we have to talk about, how much they trust what's coming out of your mouth. Think about it for a second. Listen, I want to say this to you. And it wasn't how I intended to start out my podcast, but I have patients right now, and I'm talking to you on the 2nd week of April, that would come into my office during these past 4 weeks if I was open. That's because I have a pretty large practice. So in a large practice, isn't that kind of like a large community? It is. So in that large community, you have people that are very fearful. You have people that are middle of the road, and you have patients that reflect, I don't know, the mindset of a Marine. And I'm telling you, I know from my frontline people that are fielding calls that if I wanted to go in, even during these past 6 weeks, I could have probably stayed fairly busy. And for a myriad of reasons, not the least of which are my contribution to flattening the curve that everybody's talking about, I'm not going in. So I went in one time for emergencies, and they were emergencies. Removing sutures, a prosthesis cutting into somebody's gum. Why I'm saying that to you is you're not dying when this is done. There will be people that'll still want whatever you had scheduled to do. And there will be people that are less affected financially for a very myriad of reasons. Maybe they had more money to begin with. Maybe they were almost retired. And by the way, that's the same with you and I. When you go online and listen to the plethora of advice that's being given, it makes a big difference if a guy was about to retire. I know a handful of dentists that were scheduled to open their new practice. I know one dentist who listens to me, and you'll know who you are right now, who was on his 4th day of his new practice when the state shut him down because of the pandemic. Imagine he bought a practice, prepared for the launching of the new practice, opened the practice, and 4 days later he was shut down. And that was 6 weeks ago. There's a wide range of what we're all going through right now. And as I said at the opening, what I'm going through is I don't want to quit yet. I'm not even close to that. So what am I doing? And, I'm fortunate that some people want to hear my opinion on these things beyond even you. And I'm doing some webinars for companies and organizations. In fact, I'm doing one on, it's too late to tell you because you'll be getting this the day I'm doing it, but for the state of Washington, the AGD. And I'm saying that to you because I kind of like what I prepared for them. And some of this you might have heard from me in the last couple of weeks, but I thought it was pretty good stuff, so I want to share it with you again. So before I forget, please email me. A lot of you are, by the way, at Dr. Rasner, DRRASNER at AOL. That's my private personal email. I wrote a letter to my patients a few weeks back that I think is a good letter. I'm getting a lot of good feedback from it. That you can embrace as your own letter. I don't care. I'm here for us. I'm here for you. It's a letter to let them know basically that you're not going anywhere. That when they do return, whenever that is, that you will be prepared to exceed the standards of care that are expected from us relative to what's going on with COVID-19. So hang in there, man. It's not easy for me either. I've never been off this long in 40 years. It's freaking me out, quite honestly. It is. It's hard. For all of us, it's hard. And I see everything online from people's humorous reactions to all this to try to humor their colleagues. My approach is pretty, as I think you would expect if you follow my podcast, it's straight up, this is what we got to do. And I got to tell you something. I am completely confident that what I'm telling you is what I'm going to do, with variations depending on what develops in the next 4 weeks with the CDC and ADA guidelines and all that stuff. But I'm telling you my attitude, the things you've heard me say, the continual outreach that I have to my team, me asking my employees to make calls during this time to check on our patients and just say, hey, how you doing? I'll get to that before I'm done today. That's what I'm doing, and I know it's going to work, and I know that I'm not done. I just know it. They're not even close to thinking like that. And how different it'll be, I'll tell you when I get there. And if I have to adjust my recommendations based on what I'm feeling, you see, in my 40 years, because I have a pretty big practice, I've been told by suppliers, by laboratories, they always call me and want to know how I'm doing. Because they know if I'm affected, everybody's affected. Because this is the 5th major national thing that's happened to me in my 40 years. I had 4 other recessions in 1980, 1992, 2002, and of course, what's referred to as the Great Recession of 2008 and 9. And that's the only one that had an impact on me. Other than that, I didn't have any ripple effects from any of them. And that doesn't count the personal things that have occurred in my life, like lots of you have had personal things. I've had some pretty devastating ones that I'm still standing, man. I have to admit, this one is right up there. So let me share with you just before, and I'm going to start making these a little bit shorter, because I think you got so many things to do. Well, that sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? You have so many things to do, but you got a lot more time than you ever had. So I want you to hear this slide. There isn't one industry in the world where a select few do not set the gold standard for everybody else. So that includes right now. Right now, there are certain offices in every industry, in the food industry, in the clothing industry, in the health service industry, that won't be looked at when this is done as, wow, there's even countries, right? I mean, Denmark, I believe, has a very different approach to this than the rest of the world. They're staying open. And so we don't know yet whether that's the way to go. Right now, it has not resulted in devastating outcomes for the country of Denmark. And we'll have to see if that's the way. But why not look at your office right now? Don't be a sheep. Be a leader. And maybe institute some of the things you're hearing from me right now. And as you go forward, some of the other things I'll be telling you, so that maybe you will be looked at down the road as a model of what should have been done. That's how I'm looking at it. Also understand this next slide, that the major deterrent on the development or the growth of any business is in the owner's mind, by their own fears, by their own limits, and the stories they tell themselves as to why they aren't where they want to be. Let me say it again. The major deterrent to any business, not just through a pandemic, I mean, in general, is the owner's mind. It happens to me too, by the way, so I want you to know it. And the stories that you tell yourself, and in those stories are fears and limits as to why you aren't where you want to be. By the way, that's a principle from Tony Robbins, who I'm not even a big fan of, but that one was good. And I'm saying to you, keep that in your mind as you move forward, because when you're idle, as we are right now, it can play some tricks up here, right? So I want you to remember that. You don't negatize yourself. Why shouldn't you be the one, that one office in the community or the country, wherever you're at, that overcame? The story ends with, wow, we overcame the pandemic. This is what we did back then. Whether you listen to me or whoever other numerous sources you have, good sources you have out there, that guide you back. This is not the end. I know I keep saying that. So one of the strategies I want to cover with you briefly that it's helping me right now is not even a new strategy. It's an old strategy. And I've said in a lot of my lectures, if you ever heard me, that you'll never achieve peak success by yourself. And what I meant by that is that it's really important in the running of your business, whether you're my friend who just bought the practice in the West Coast 2 months ago and got shut down on his 4th day, or you're going to buy a practice next year, or wherever you're at in your development, it's never too late for you to start developing rock solid relationships. Think about this. This is different. With all the people that end up making your business what it is. And what I mean by that is, hear me out now, your banker. I don't know who your banker is, obviously, but I would make it a point going forward that you sit down for 30 minutes one day with whoever is on that telephone when you're getting loans or mortgages or whatever you're doing, and make sure they know your face. Make sure they know who you are. Make sure they know they can count on you and believe in you. You may think you poo-poo this, or maybe you'll fast forward this right now. Let me tell you something. I have the cell phone of my banker. And it's not because I'm a multi-million dollar account. It's because there's a personal relationship there, which is really what I'm alluding to. Which is, if you think about it, it's what I always tell you to do with your patients. And that's who you do business with. The people that make you feel value. They know who you are. So when we were going through the paycheck programs and all the small business disaster loans that are being set up here in the United States, I did not know who to call. I called him, and he knows that I sent my application in, and he knows I'm waiting for an answer. But it's not just them. This just occurred when I was preparing this webinar for Washington. These thoughts I thought you might want to hear anyway. So I have that, for example, with my repair guy. So never in my 40 years did a chair ever break down, or a vital piece of equipment, a light in one of my operatories, or suction or something, and I had to wait a day or two for my repair guy. Do you know why? Because I knew early on in my career that was important to me. And so the one thing I did to establish a solid connection between me and my repairman is I always paid him the day he showed up. I asked him to make me an invoice that day. And why did I do that? Because I just knew that repairmen usually are real low on the totem pole of who you guys think's important. And so they might wait 4 to 6 weeks or even longer to get their money. And when my guy hears a call from Steve Rasner, he knows he's getting paid that day. And does that change the career? No, man, but it minimizes the bumps. And the same thing for your supply person, even your UPS and FedEx man. So we used to gift our UPS and FedEx men a couple times a year, and we certainly welcomed them in with more than just, hey, how you doing? It goes over there next to that wall. They know who we are. They can feel the vibe of doing business. They're part of their daily stops with our office. And so once in a while, don't you have to call UPS or FedEx? And maybe they would have to come back and make a delivery to you or pick something up that you needed to go out. I mean, these are all little things. I get it, especially in the atmosphere we're all practicing right now. But man, it adds up. And it's adding up now for me, because the people that I need that help me during this plight that we're in are available. I call this an old school business principle, and that is to establish connection. Be respectful. Make all the people that make your business hum know they are relevant to that, from the repairman to the delivery guy. I've even taken it to the extent in my career where my primary care physician, maybe we sent him a tray of bagels one time or 2 times and said, we really appreciate what you do for the community and that you're Dr. Rasner's care provider. Because a lot of times I was able to get staff members of mine into my primary care physician when they were sick and couldn't get into theirs. Do you know how powerful that is in the career? So maybe only execute that favor one time. But think about that. It's happened to me. That exact scenario I just gave you has actually happened to me, where somebody, maybe their child was sick, and I was able to get them in to my primary care provider, not because I'm the godfather, but to be honest with you, it feels like that a little bit sometimes. It's based on Dale Carnegie principles of making people feel value and establishing relationships, and it's good business. So let me leave you to this week with a couple small pearls. The one thing everybody's talking about online is leadership, right? Well, you can't be halfway in if you're going to be a leader. You can't. You either lead or you hide. And so what are the things that are relevant to us right now when I talk about leadership? The big thing, without any doubt, is communication. That's a big 11-letter word, but it means a lot. So what would be the most important? Like, I have friends, doctors, by the way, and staff that still don't know how they're going to get paid. Nobody's communicated that to them. Imagine, we're well into this thing, and they don't know where they stand with their office. I don't think that's a good way to communicate. So whatever it is, if you expected them to take unemployment, then you got to make sure they knew that a while back. And if they don't know it yet, everybody's different. I know a doctor's teams where the doctor is paying them already the full salaries that was offered under the protection plan, the payroll protection plan. All our situations are different. All of us have different levels. We do have to survive and sustain ourselves during this interim period where we don't know where we're at, correct? So I don't know how many businesses have that kind of capital that can just pay their team full while they sit home. It's certainly humbling to ask people to take unemployment. I get it. But they need to be clear about it. Communicate weekly or with phone calls to your whole team to what I call the State of the Union. And by the way, I haven't offered this before, but there's a letter I sent my team that I haven't offered you before that I will gladly resend to you. And those of you that asked me for the patient letter, which I can send both if you haven't asked me yet, that kind of gave them the State of the Union address. I think, again, it's a good tool that I use that may help you with your team. And then I communicate, I would have to tell you, daily with my key managers and people at my office. Now, you may have an office of 4 or 5 people. If I had that, I would communicate with everybody. But I have a team of 20-some staff members, and I don't find it necessary daily or every few days to communicate with everybody. I really don't. So I do communicate with a lot of them on a daily basis. And look, I got to be honest with you. It's not even like I wake up in the morning and say, yeah, we're going to beat this thing today. And, I'm going to go out and communicate. Sometimes I don't feel like doing it. But I do it because it's always served me well in the past, and it's common sense. And I'm going to leave you with this. And this may not be popular with your team members, but I'm just going to say it. So when I grew up, one of the most famous presidents in my generation was John F. Kennedy. And at his inauguration speech, he said this. He said, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Look it up and Google it. It was pretty unheard of. I have to ask you right now, you all see what I see online with we're all in this together. Well, are we all in this together for real? I think I am with my team. My team has demonstrated by their actions that we're all in this together. And what I mean by that is just substitute the word office for country. And I would have to tell those of you that have been with an office for some time, how invested are you in the outcome of this office? Do you want to do anything, or can you do? Have you asked yourself that? So let me give you an example. I told you earlier in an earlier podcast that my team is on unemployment right now. If I could bring them back and work full time, then I would do that. But I don't have that kind of work. And while they're on unemployment, a number of my hygienists are making calls to our patients, and I call that the Reach Out program. If I said this on my last podcast, I apologize, but I think you need to hear it again because it's important what I want you to communicate. They're simply reaching out and saying, for example, hi, this is Valerie from Dr. Razner's office. Listen, we're just calling to say hi. We're just calling to let you know we're thinking about you and that not trying to even reschedule you at this time. We know this is incredibly challenging to everyone. We consider ourselves a solid part of this community, and you are a part of our community. And we just want you to know we're going to be here. And when we're done and the time is right for you to come back, you can be sure that we'll exceed whatever the guidelines are to make you feel safe and comfortable. And we will move at whatever pace is comfortable for you regarding your healthcare needs. And again, that's the third thing I've told you in this podcast that I can also send you because I have that in writing as well. So it was my patient letter to all my patients. It was the letter to my staff. And that was a script I just gave you what my hygienists have been saying. So it's important to know whether you want to reschedule them or not. is kind of up to you. I think this is a moment that some patients will remember forever. I think that about everything in life right now. Your family, your team, your patients. I think they're going to remember how you led or how you reacted to all this. Have you been totally silent? That wouldn't be good. Have you been, I don't know, offering specials that allow them to save money if they buy this or schedule this now? That, in my opinion, would be a horrible idea. Now, this is a rare moment to be truly altruistic and truly benevolent about what they're all going through. And that you can step back from the big picture and you see yourself as this solid spoke in the community, and you are going to be there when it's done. And no, you're just calling to say, we're thinking about you. Hang in there. We'll be here when you get back. I hope that helps some of you. It felt good to me. We'll see you next week on The Lionhearted. Thanks for tuning in.